We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self-development and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number 1 in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner-Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. Welcome everybody to episode 2 of season 8. I hope you all enjoyed the first one. A little change in pace and approach. So I want to continue in a similar vein, but I had a podcast in mind that I thought would be an appropriate follow-up from the first one of the evolving self. But something's come up that made me go, hang on a minute. I feel more passionate about the next topic. And, my tendency is to go with what I'm sort of intuiting and feeling much more than with what I should do. A lot of times that works out, sometimes it doesn't, but let's just see how we go. So, I am absolutely sure that all of you who are tuning into this particular podcast, Inspire Change with me, are aware of the Manosphere, okay? Possibly there's going to be people who don't necessarily know the term, but probably have heard of people like Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, and Nick Fuentes, and so on. A whole bunch of people. Okay, so this is what this particular podcast is actually going to be about. And you may ask me why. And the simple reason is that it's not because it doesn't get enough airspace, but I think that we're having, or at least we're not having, the discussion that we should be having about this particular issue. As you know, I tend to work with teenage boys, and I tend to do a lot of work with young men and men in general. Some of which, especially the young teen boys, who are trying to come to terms with what it is to be male, masculine, and in Australian language, a bloke, are trying to figure out how to maneuver this space into social media. And I get this from parents as well. They're sort of a bit confused and puzzled about how do I necessarily create, in a way, an antidote to this particular issue. And so, first thing I want to point out in this particular podcast is that this whole thing with the manosphere needs to be seen as a symptom and not an essential argument or construct, right? And in that context, there's a simple trap we keep falling into when we talk about the manosphere. A lot of us talk about it as if it is what men are. Now, it's as if it reveals some timeless male nature. And the only response to it is condemnation, ridicule, or panic. And for, all the manosphere stuff out there, there's some pretty witty and often very intelligent counter-arguments that people are making. Some of it's funny as hell, really good laugh. But despite the fact that that response feels in a way satisfying, and believe me, I've had my fair share of likes on a lot of these YouTubers and Facebook posts, but it's not going to do anything. In fact, it's actually going to fail if our aim is to dissuade, especially young boys and men, to take a close look at what they're actually doing in this space. What is it that they're absorbing? What is it that they're hearing? Now, my argument is that it fails because we misunderstand what the manosphere is actually doing. Now, having established that the manosphere is not the essence of men, and so in the first episode, I talked about the, patriarchal introject, and the other aspect to this is the masculine introject. And, I'm going to spend some more time explaining the relationship between the two and its essential differences and how we can fundamentally use this for our own personal growth and for our development in our community. We need to consider the fact that the manosphere is a symptom of a much deeper problem. It's a sign, ultimately, of unmet needs. It's a sign of distorted grievances. And, importantly, it's monetized by influencers and amplified by an attention economy that rewards outrage. If we're going to reduce its pull, we need to understand three things very clearly. Firstly, what does it offer? What does it exploit? And what is a credible counter-narrative, and how will that look and sound? So, this is the setting for today's podcast. So welcome, I'm Gunter, this is Inspired Change, and I hope this will help clarify really, really important issue in today's society. So let's start with the issue of what is the manosphere as a symptom. So the manosphere is an online ecosystem of communities and creators that offer men explanations for their pain. If we look at the whole way it's shaped and constructed and spread, that's exactly what it's about. Sometimes these explanations contain grains of truth. Like, for example, men do face loneliness. Men do feel disposable. Many men are completely confused about dating, relationships, social expectations, and what they are allowed to feel. Many, many of these men are tired of being treated as either a problem or a punchline. So far, so human. Now, the problem is the way these realities are interpreted. The manosphere tends to convert genuine need into a grievance. It
turns vulnerability into a resentment. It turns complexity into a certainty, like a given. And it turns personal difficulty into an enemy story. Me versus them. And that's why it functions like a symptom. It's an attempt to regulate discomfort by using identity and blame. So let's move on. So what in this space does it actually offer? Because this is where people often miss the point. If you only see toxicity, you miss the hook. If you miss the hook, you can't compete with it or repair it. Now, what it offers is not just an ideology. In fact, what it does is it actually, for many, offers psychological relief. It also offers belonging, even if it's virtual. You're part of a tribe, a place to go where your frustrations are mirrored and validated. It also offers that thing called certainty, simple explanations, clean categories, and a sense of I finally understand what is going on. It also offers status. Many of these spaces tell men explicitly or implicitly that they are superior if they see through the matrix, if they wake up, if they dominate the game. It also, therefore, offers a sense of power. The promise that if you adopt certain tactics, you will no longer be rejected, embarrassed, or invisible. Apply that to the dating game. You know, all those coaches out there telling you and giving you strategies on how to practice being better at picking up. Also, psychologically speaking, this is really, really important. It offers a kind of father energy, rules, disciplines, a pathway. Some men are absolutely desperate for structure because their inner world feels chaotic, and they've often come from a chaotic outer world. And that last part really matters. A lot of men are not looking actually for hate. They're looking for footing, for belonging, for being acknowledged, for being validated, for being meaningful. So at the bottom line, the Manosphere offers a place to be. But here comes the trick. It also exploits something. It exploits pain that men often do not know how to name. It's why I do a lot of stuff about reflection, introspection, from the body to the emotion to the story you tell yourself. It exploits shame, that feeling of being broken, inadequate, unchosen, unwanted, not enough. I am not good enough. It also exploits sexual insecurity and social confusion. This is particularly relevant in young men who feel they miss the lessons everyone else seems to have gotten. Right? It exploits loneliness, that deep ache of not being known and not knowing how to become known. And it exploits something more subtle. It exploits the patriarchal introject and the masculine introject. Now, those of you who listen to Season 8 so far, you'll remember this language. The masculine introject is the internal rule book that tells men they must be self-reliant, emotionally contained, always competent, never really exposed. It says, in effect, that vulnerability is a danger. Now, the patriarchal introject levels that up. It increases it. So we've got a heady mix. When men can't process vulnerability directly because they feel ashamed, they often convert it into something more socially acceptable within those communities. And those are emotional: anger, contempt, truth-telling, mockery, and domination fantasies. That conversion is not strength, it's a defense. Let's be blunt that this is a business model. Outrage drives engagement. Look at the clickbaits on YouTube and all the other social platforms. Some of it's accurate to a point, but a lot of it is like it grabs the emotion, so you click on it and then you go through 8, 10, 15 minutes and you go, what the hell was that about? It didn't actually tell me what the clickbait was about. And so you leave disappointed. The Manosphere does that slightly differently. So outrage drives engagement drives attention, and attention drives money. The algorithms. So the ecosystem rewards creators who make men feel more aggrieved, more certain, and more separate from real relationships. It also rewards content that makes women into a single, undifferentiated object, either as a prize, a threat, or the enemy. So, what's the thing that we need to do? Well, frankly, we need to build credible counter-narratives. Not propaganda, not scolding, not be a better man moralizing. Credible counter-narratives are those that speak to what men are actually trying to solve, while refuting the enemy's story. A credible counter-narrative starts with an acknowledgement. It says, yes, many men are lonely. Yes, dating can feel brutal. Yes, status anxiety is real. Yes, many men feel unsure how to be masculine in a changing world. And what does masculine actually mean? And yes, many men feel they cannot talk honestly without being mocked. If you skip acknowledgement, you lose them immediately. Because the Manosphere will say, see, they don't care about you and they don't understand you. And in some parts, that's sort of true. But acknowledgement is not agreement with the blame. A credible counter-narrative adds precision. It says your pain is real, but the explanation you've been given is a trap. It's a trap because it trades your inner life for certainty. It trades intimacy for domination. It trades the hard work of development for the cheap hit of a grievance. The work is about being a better human, a more whole human. Now, to make this practical, blah, blah, I'm going to give you 3 counter moves, 3 ways to respond that actually work, whether you're the man being pulled or someone who cares about him. The first counter move is this: translate the grievance into a need. Often the underlying issues are not obvious. So when a man says women are all the same, or they only want money, or the system is rigged, there's usually a human sentence underneath, not gendered. Often that underlying sentence is, I feel rejected, or I don't know how to be chosen. I'm scared that I'm not enough, or I feel invisible, or I don't know how to do intimacy without getting lost or losing myself in the other person. So if you can translate these grievances into a need, you can start addressing reality rather than fighting an ideology, which, as we know, is always pretty tricky. The second counter move is this: bring it back to the body, not the argument. These spaces run on activation. They keep, fundamentally, the nervous system hot, right? A hot nervous system makes people crave certainty, because certainty at that point feels like safety. So one of the most powerful interventions is physiological, not as a wellness gimmick, but as a direct way to interrupt manipulation. If you're activated, you're recruitable. We can see this in group dynamics. There's lots and lots of historical examples, especially, during the Hitler rallies, Hitler Youth. And we're seeing it now, Proud Boys, all those sort of groups. They use activation to pull people in. However, if you can downshift that activation, you can begin to think more clearly. So countermove offers a dignity pathway, not a shame lecture. Most men do not leave the Manosphere because someone wins an argument. They leave because the path starts to feel empty, repetitive, and toxic, corrosive. Or they have a relational loss that forces reality. Or they perhaps find a better way to build dignity. A dignity pathway means real competence, real friendships, real skills with women, real emotional strength, real leadership. It means learning to handle rejection without collapsing and learning to build a life that does not depend on domination. Now, this is where a lot of the mainstream commentary fails. It says to men, stop it. It doesn't say, here's what to build instead. Or what is it that you actually deep down really want? So I'll give you a concrete example. Imagine a young man, maybe in his 20s. He's had a couple of painful rejections. He's embarrassed. He's lonely. He's watching his peers pair off. And in that process, often gets even lonelier. Possibly even, made a bit of fun of. And he feels left behind. So what does he do? He goes online and finds a content creator who says, you're not failing. Women are the problem. The game's rigged. And here are the rules. Here are the tactics. And here's your enemy. Now, in the short term, he feels a sense of relief. Oh, phew. It's not me, it's them. His pain now has a story. His shame becomes anger, and in some instances, rage and violence. His confusion becomes certainty. He is convinced, and in that certainty, he gets a rush of power. But the cost is high. He becomes more suspicious, less open, less capable of real intimacy. He starts treating women as a test, as an object, not as human beings. And he starts relating to other men through superiority rather than friendship. And here's the rub. His loneliness actually gets worse. Now imagine a different response. A counter-narrative that is credible. It says, your rejection hurts. That's real. But bitterness will cost you your future. How about we build something better? This now gives him a pathway, improved social skills, health, possibly financial stability if that's needed, but also a greater emotional range. He learns how to handle discomfort because ultimately that's all of us. We all need to learn how to handle discomfort. He learns how to read cues without entitlement and without necessarily taking it personal. He learns how to be confident without contempt or arrogance. But most importantly, in that process, and it is a process, it's not a single point of arrival, he learns how to repair his relationship with himself. Now, fundamentally, this is the making good men great idea in action, not softness, but capability. And that is self-oriented. I'm going to be paying attention to myself physically, emotionally, intellectually, and socially, and I'm going to do the best that I can, even though I know that I'm not perfect. And here's the deeper point in all of this. The manosphere thrives where men lack essentially a doorway into maturity. If men, well, let me talk about boys. If boys do not have older men who model authenticity, honesty, steadiness, kindness with boundaries, and dignity without dominance, then the internet will provide that initiation. It's just that it's going to be a broken one. So what should we be building culturally and personally? We need to build places where men can speak about shame without being humiliated. In Australia, we have a term that's often used, and that is taking the piss out of someone. Now, occasionally it can be fun and lighthearted, and in a strong enough emotional relationship, no damage is done. But in male peer groups, this often is directed at those who can least cope with it. And that brings me to being able to build male friendships that can hold truth, not just banter. We need to be able to connect with each other emotionally. We possibly sometimes do need certain rites of passage that teach responsibility, not grievance. We have to teach boys that strength is not just physical. It includes emotional skill and not emotional numbness. And we come back to that point where we need to teach men that repair, that working on oneself, working on being that, more whole, healed person is a strength. And we need to stop treating the choice as binary, either toxic masculinity or retro machismo. That binary, in a way, is part of the trap. In my research, quite often the stuff's referred to as traditional masculinity. Now, it's a sort of soft observation of being basically a dinosaur. Again, most guys go, what the hell is traditional masculinity? They get confused. Those who pick it up intuitively often react to it. So here's a note to partners and parents, because I know many of you are listening too. If someone you love is being pulled into these spaces, the manosphere, arguing about facts is really the first move. The first step is to identify the need underlying the content. Or should I say the content and intent? What is that person intending to get out of that? What is he not saying? What's he ashamed of? What is he terrified of feeling? Then set some boundaries. You can acknowledge pain without tolerating contempt. You can stay in a relationship without consenting to misogyny. I can talk with you about loneliness and dating. I won't sit in a conversation that dehumanizes women. That combination of empathy and boundary is powerful. It models the and also stance that I've talked about in previous episodes. It's care and firmness. So let me sort of close with a few simple diagnostic questions. A question that helps you detect whether you're being pulled by a grievance narrative. When do you feel exposed? And what do you do? Do you go looking for an enemy? Do you go looking for certainty? Do you look for someone to blame? Or do you go looking for the next skill that you need to build? That one question can begin to change your trajectory. Now, if you want to do the work from this episode, not just listen to it, I've created a Patreon exercise that takes you through a short reflection, a nervous system downshift, and a real-world action for the week. And you'll find it at patreon.com/inspired change. I'm Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspired Change, and hopefully you'll see me next week, and I'll see you next week.
You know, on this show, we talk a lot about living with purpose, slowing down, paying attention, and being intentional about the choices we make every day. Because when we simplify the noise around us, we can better hear what really matters. Empathy, connection, and showing up as the best version of ourselves. That's why I'm genuinely pleased to welcome our newest sponsor, Distill Union. Their philosophy aligns beautifully with what we do here. Distill Union creates slick, thoughtfully designed essentials, wallets, key organizers, phone cases, all built with a less is more approach. Their Wally wallets, Ferris key organizers, these are everyday tools that make life easier, cleaner, and calmer. In that simplicity, there's space for clarity. There's space for change. As a thank you to our Inspired Change community, they're offering 20% off any product with the promo code Inspired Change. Have a look, try them out, and see how simplifying your day can open the door to something deeper. Visit distillunion.com and enjoy 20% off any product with the promo code Inspire Change. That's distillunion.com with promo code Inspire Change to check out.
Hello to all our listeners. We thank you for tuning in and promoting positive social change. We are thrilled to announce that we've officially hit 170,000 downloads for our Season 8 premiere. Thank you all so much for continuing to be a part of Gunter's efforts in transforming not only men's lives, but lives in general. We are forever grateful for your continued support, which is reflected clearly on our listeners' list. Therefore, we share our gratitude with our listeners in the south of France. You made it to number 10 on this week's global listeners list. For our top 10 on the USA's listeners list, we want to give a special shout out to Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens for getting New York to number 3 in the USA. Congratulations, France and New York! We thank you so much for your continued support, and we appreciate your efforts to support positive social change. I, Devonna Prinzi, the co-executive producer, and our showrunner, Miranda Spigner-Sapone, sincerely thank you and ask that you please take the time to like, follow, subscribe, and share, as your efforts make a difference to everyone here at Inspire Change with Gunter. Please remember, if you want to share your story of social change, feel free to reach out to the show directly. Please see the show notes for our contact information. As always, thank you to each and every one of our listeners, and most importantly, please keep inspiring positive social change.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.guntersvoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.